Good afternoon, everyone, and a big thanks to Exopolitics Denmark and for Pia and Frederick and all of the team for being so kind to invite me from the other side of the world. And I would like to share with you some of the ways I've come to understand this amazing and complex phenomena. And there are many sides to the elephant. And because of that, I would like to show you different ways I believe we're being woken up to realize that we're not alone. So I'm calling it triggers of consciousness because for everyone I believe it's different. And for some it's a lot more traumatic than others. For others it seems to be very, very subtle. And so I'm looking at the different ways we can know this is a reality. And one of the most important things I've discovered since I've been in Denmark, and I've spoken to some individuals that have had contact, the hardest for them has been when they've had experiences that they can't talk about here because of judgment. And this obviously is across the globe, particularly in Western societies. As soon as you have what I call the multidimensional side of your experiences, people find it very hard to listen to or to accept. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey down that side of things as well, so that perhaps those of you that have that kind of experience may understand it's very relevant and very much part of what contact is all about. So I'm starting off with triggers of consciousness. One of the most profound statements I heard from a gentleman who's now in his 60s that wrote the book, Does It Rain in Other Dimensions, is Mike Oram. And Mike wrote to me many, many years ago now and told me he was only 4 years old when he said something like this: something of great importance is going to happen on this earth. It will not happen in your lifetime, but mine, and affect all units of consciousness, mineral, vegetable, animal, and man. It's to do with global consciousness, a vast change in consciousness. The energy is heading this way. The essence of this energy is light, and the energy will repair our DNA. It will make us complete and who we really are. What is astounding was Mike at the time was just 4 years old. So I call this disclosure from the ground up. If we're continuing to wait for the authorities to let us know this is real, we could still perhaps be waiting another 100 years the way things are going. And I feel that what really is needing to happen and will happen is what I call disclosure from the ground up. Now, if I can get this going, and I just want to say also that what has been brilliant for me is that not just with a CERN, I've become involved with another organization, which I feel is adding the bit that a CERN was missing. And I feel that ufology is actually missing. So when we start with my support, which was emotional, psychological support and information, now I'm involved with another organization that I will just mention briefly, and that is FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And I offer telephone, internet support, access to some psychologists, and complementary practitioners, information, global networking, presentations, media, etc. But what's happening with FREE and the FREE mandate is that we finally have some of those specialists in their field that are prepared to look at this in a way that will give us credentials in what I call the third dimensional world. So the FREE Foundation researches evidence for the reality of extraterrestrial encounters through the scientific supported through the quantum hologram theory of physics and linked to non-ordinary states of consciousness. So it's a comprehensive, multidisciplinary academic research project into the extraterrestrial contact, both academic, scientific, and experiencer support. And will focus on encounter experiences no matter how they are experienced. And this, I mean, everything that's in the mandate of that, whether it's through having a near-death experience and this providing the first encounters, out-of-body experiences, shamanic experiences. In fact, if you think you're a hybrid, whether you think you're a walk-in, whatever it is and however you understand it is part of this understanding that we as a species, are being contacted. We have some very wonderful gentlemen that some of you will certainly know. Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. He's kind enough to lend his name to our new foundation. And what is wonderful, he's been researching consciousness for the last 40 years. And we've also got another wonderful gentleman, Dr. Rudy Shield, who's our executive director. And he, of course, is, because of his connection with Dr. John Mack, has been very, very supportive of this whole phenomena and the way that he's researching the physics that will help us understand the way this is experienced. So we've also got some really wonderful individuals involved, and I'll go very, very briefly through this. Dr. John Climo, who's a retired professor of psychology of 40 years. Dr. Leo Sprinkle, many of you will know. Dr. Bob Davis, who's a retired neuroscientist. We've got Dr. Michael Melton, who's a psychologist, myself and many others. But what is really brilliant is they're all absolutely accepting that this is a reality. And they're bringing their understanding and their background to help bring this into mainstream. This is the whole point of this. I can't give you the exact percentages at this time because we're still collating them, and we'll release them, but with our first phase survey of well over now 1,600 responses, what we're finding is not only do a high percentage cite UFOs and experience telepathic communication, receive downloaded information of new technologies, high number experience out-of-body experiences, many lose interest in materialism, at least half saw a physical ET or interacted with them, and a very high number see their experiences as positive. On the phase 2, which we've had less numbers so far, and these surveys have been put together with a number of researchers with the support of the academic arm, which is Dr. Climo and Dr. Leo Sprinkle and others. Significant number of experienced near-death experiences, medical healing with ETs. A high percentage have not experienced an abduction. High percentage felt connection between the ETs and the spirit world, both pre-birth and post-death. Many reported ETs appeared playful and had emotions, and a high number, an extremely high number, communications with an ET. So these are really important facts that have not been if you like, up to this point, really collated in a way that the academic and scientific world have really been prepared to look at. And it's time, and I'm sure you agree with me there. So the transformative highlights we've discovered so far are a high percentage become have minimal interest in materialistic values. They are far more intuitive than the average person. They've received knowledge and information from their contacts. Again, high percentage of experienced out-of-body experiences, half of experienced interaction with greys and humanoids, and majority positive experiences. So this is about broadening the mandate. And I, again, feel like I'm sure many of you do, and what I've heard so far from those that have come to me here is that their experiences are far broader than anyone has ever acknowledged before. Yes, we need the photographs and the video footage, the sightings, and to know there's implanted objects that make it a reality, marks and scars that fluoresce under black ultraviolet light, whistleblower testimony, military and political disclosure, the magnetic changes in soil after a craft lands, multiple witnesses and what have you, and conscious recall. The other thing that is very, very important, of course, is the DNA evidence, and I'll go very briefly into that in a minute. So we know that there is some form of extraterrestrial manipulation, but what has not been looked at and not researched is all this other side, the multidimensional side of ET contact. And this is everything from out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, time distortions, missing time, healing and healing abilities, altered enhanced senses, information downloads such as advanced physics, heightened multidimensional senses such as telepathy, clairvoyance, past life recall both on Earth and other planets, telekinesis, moving objects with the mind, transformative changes in perspective of holistic lifestyles and attitude, expressions of contact, the scripts, the art, the star languages, all of these things that I am seeing time and time again, not only from adults, but small children writing scripts and talking about their ET contact and shamanic types of experiences. This has to be part of the whole, because it is part of how contact happens. One of the interesting things, and here is a quote from Dr. Rudy Shield. What the UFO phenomenon is now contributing to our overall knowledge of the structure of the universe, we understand that the speed of thought far exceeds the speed of light, and we live in a quantum universe in which the quantum effect resides in the dark energy field. This quantum universe supports information transfer from mind to mind through the exchange of quantum holograms, and proceeding at the speed of thought allows for what society calls miracles, such as telepathy, past life experiences, remote viewing, etc. UFOs in particular, which get here much faster than the speed of light and allow their alien visitors to interact with us in a variety of ways. And this can be confusing sometimes because the craft can be so very different and the beings can be so very different. But it simply suggests there are a great many civilizations out there interacting with us. So this is an astrophysicist that is saying quite clearly that his understanding of physics enables all these multidimensional experiences that so many of those with contact have. So triggers of consciousness awakening to who we are may begin with the sighting of a UFO, or it might be seeing orbs, perceiving orbs, or seeing even orbs on you're taking a picture and you see the orbs in a picture or whatever. The crop circles, sometimes people have profound encounters, or that wakes them up by being in a crop circle, for example. They may have interdimensional or extra-dimensional interactions with different beings, and there's a great many of those as well. So we're not just talking about extraterrestrial here, we're talking about interdimensional, extra-dimensional, ultra-dimensional, or even time travelers. The solar and planetary frequencies are altering our DNA, and I will discuss this. Communications through downloads, holographic scripts, symbols, artwork, languages, telepathy, healing, ET education on the craft, and recall of star origins. All of these are part of contact. So every 6 minutes, someone around the globe sees a UFO. And I'd like to show you a little bit of this clip of a very fascinating sighting a few years ago now.
Wait.
Karen. Oh, look, another one come down.
Oh.
It's up there, the sky looks it. No place or nothing. And another.
Oh my God. What's that?
Look, coming down.
This is taken in
been
near
going on for
Avebury.
ages.
I've actually been to the
Oh,
very
look at
garden where this was taken near Silbury Hill.
You know where that is? Were you took people yesterday?
No, it's not that far.
No.
I mean, it's a bit. It
When
could.
Barrows out happened to mine.
It could be. I mean, if there's a party on, it could be fireworks. It doesn't look like a dog, does it?
No, they're coming from the sky. Look.
Where is that area?
That's no fireworks out.
That's on the left, on the way to Devizes.
Yes, it is. It's Bishop's Callens.
Well, it's over that way.
Oh!
There's another. Oh my God. That's not fireworks, mate.
No, I don't think it is either. Yeah, because look, they're staying up to, they're staying lit too long, John.
That's a Wiltshire accent. I never got to meet them, sadly.
This has been going on for some time now.
Yeah, but John, that one at Woodborough, there's a load of them all together, isn't it?
She's a nurse from Sydney,
A lot of them all together.
and there's a
One's
road
about
just
5 or
prior
6
to where they were
on the
taking
same
it.
Field, isn't it?
Could be over that way.
No. That's why I went there too.
I'm introducing you to John and Denise, who run a bed and breakfast at Avebury, just opposite Silbury Hill. Last night on Tuesday the 17th of July, I arrived here to spend the night, and upon entering my bedroom I was looking out the bedroom window which overlooks the beautiful Silbury Hill, and I saw the most amazing anomalous lights on the horizon towards the direction of Bishop's Cannings. And John and Denise are going to explain what they saw as well. They came out to the garden as well to have a look.
Yeah, it was about like flashes, wasn't it?
Yeah, like five, one, then another, then another, then another.
Then we stopped them and then they started again. It went on for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes after that.
Yeah.
I won't give you any more of that because it's very hard to understand, but what Megan does do is actually show you the absolute direction where she was taking it, and there's nothing there but trees. And I've actually been in the garden and I've actually seen that. And it's literally within half a mile of Silbury Hill, which is a very significant prehistoric site. And there's a great deal that goes on there from energetically, and people see all sorts of things, of course, in that whole area of Wiltshire, including so many crop circles. And when I was there, I actually went into a crop circle just not far from there, probably about a mile from there. I went into a new crop circle when I was there last year. One of the important things is that Megan's done is that she's looked at similar craft all around the world, and there's lots of sightings with this particular craft. As you can see here, this one's in Colombia, and you can't see it as, it looks identical. So she's actually managed to get a lot of different pictures that substantiate that this is certainly something that appears like a craft. What is important in all of this is, for her, it was the sighting that was her awakening. After I saw the light craft, it changed my life. I felt very emotional for this loving demonstration we're not alone. It was very personal and has profoundly affected my life. I felt compelled to be of service. This experience has given me so much hope and insights with a real sense of understanding of many things, and she's not alone with that. So many say the similar thing to me. So very briefly, I'm going through what I call our cosmic heritage. And I know most of you are pretty well informed in terms of this, but I just want to point out again some of the things that are right in front of us and how it is quite strange to me that others don't see this. Here you see an image of one of the pharaohs, and we know that the skulls that you're seeing there on the screen have been found in various places, including in Peru. They used to say that this was binding of the head, and the primitive peoples would bind, the cultures would bind the heads until they found fetuses with the same shaped skulls. So that got rid of that theory. One of the interesting things that constantly comes to me is information from experiences where they get information that they have no knowledge of, and Tracy Taylor is one of them. One night I had this intense feeling before sleep. I wrote it in a process where I had little control, something beyond my understanding. It was contrary to everything I'd been taught. It said the human race had been created by extraterrestrials, and it contained information about genetic manipulation of human and ET DNA to create another species. So, is the human DNA programmer extraterrestrial? We do know in many of the religious texts, we get information that certainly suggests this. And in the Bible alone, we have this interesting statement in Genesis. And then God said, "And now we will make human beings. They will be like us and resemble us." But who is us? Francis Crick, co-founder of the DNA molecule, author of Life Itself, talked about how he understood what he understood about DNA. And one of the interesting things that he made a very important statement, saying he believed an advanced civilization transported the seeds of life in a spaceship. And we have 223 genes, which are a sideways insertion of genetic material, all related to higher psychological functioning. Now, one of the interesting things that I was told in Adelaide was a gentleman came up to me in his 70s and said he worked with Dr. Crick. And he said to me, "Mary, there is no other species on this planet that has those 223 genes." Some of you will be aware of Lloyd Pye, who sadly passed away in the last few years, and his research over 10 years on the star-child skull and what he ultimately discovered, the anomalies in this particular skull that suggested in the mitochondrial DNA that the mother was extraterrestrial. One of the interesting things in his book, The Intervention Theory, which I asked him if I could utilize the statement, was from a whistleblower geneticist. And this is the statement this geneticist wrote to Lloyd Pye and was in his book. By certain methods of DNA dating, one can tell that numerous genes have been recently added to the human genome. If workers in my field were to say such things openly, we would be ostracized. Any work along these lines would be rejected without any form of appeal. So what can we do? And he's not the only geneticist that is now making these statements, although they have to be careful because we know why. Dr. William Brown wrote to me some years ago. He's part of Exopolitics, and this is what he told me. There's historical evidence of genetic manipulation which points to extraterrestrial intervention. In DNA molecules fused together, this does not happen naturally. There are many signs of genetic manipulation showing advanced technology have been used to remodel the genomes in human DNA. And this, of course, was Dr. Crick. The DNA molecule is the most efficient information storage system in the entire universe. The immensity of complex coded and precisely sequenced information is staggering. The DNA evidence speaks of intelligent, information-bearing design. DNA functions like letters in a written language or symbols in a computer code. They programmed the molecules so that when we reached a certain level of intelligence, we would be able to access their information, and they could therefore teach us about ourselves and how to progress. For life to form by chance is mathematically virtually impossible. Human DNA, is it an extraterrestrial code? A message conveying our true origins? Two scientists in the Department of Mathematics actually say this. The genetic code suggests it was invented outside the solar system several billion years ago, and it appears there is an intelligent signal embedded in our genetic code, a mathematical and semantic message, a biological SETI. This method would have greater longevity and a chance for detecting ET than a transient extraterrestrial radio transmission. There are recognizable hallmarks of artificiality, patterns essentially irreducible to any natural origin. You could go on. But what was interesting for me is when you get a 13-year-old that has an experience with his brother who's 11, they both describe being taken up onto a spacecraft. And the 13-year-old ultimately draws the picture that you see in front of you with a being that's holding this particular instrument, which he actually said wasn't to harm, it was more to put you in a trance state, and said to his mother, he felt these beings were like scientists and curious about us, and was told it was something to do with genetics. So where are the clues? There are many. And one of them is through our mythology and anthropological cues and evidence that we've never been alone. From Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, we see all these images, which of course suggest not only reptilian, lizard-type beings, which many people have interactions with. And then we've got the pharaohs, the sons of gods, the ovoid skulls found in Peru and Mexico. And these pictures that are here, the top one I took myself when I was in Mexico, which is this one here. But what's also interesting is this drawing by a gentleman in Ireland, and as you can see, he's drawing the ovoid skulls as well of the star beings that he interacts with. So we keep looking at what the experiencer says, and then do we see evidence of it in other ways? One of the fascinating things with this young lady, Tracy Taylor, she's not as young as she was when I knew her, obviously 10 or 14 years ago now, but she said to me then, the pyramids are conscious energetic amplifiers focusing power and also show our connections to Sirius and the lion people. One of the interesting things that again I noticed was when Tracy did these drawings, and for those of you that have bought the DVD Expressions of ET Contact, the visual blueprint, her story's on there, and you'll see this image. She went to Luxor, Karnak, and at Karnak she knew by taking this particular image that she'd drawn several years before it was going to fit in this particular hieroglyph. She absolutely knew it would, and of course it did. So let's look at it, gods or ETs, and here we have the Hindu god Ganesha, and there you're seeing a drawing from an experiencer. Many years ago she gave me this one. She called it a telephant. So I see the correlation time and time again. Here you've got a blue being, Imoko, that this young lady of 9 years old said is her guide and teacher. And we of course have the Indian god Krishna. Again, we've got the blue skin, and what an interesting shape this is when you actually look at it. When you look at it with fresh eyes, it's amazing what you can see. This is an image of an Arcturian ancestry with a young man of 17 called Antonio. Again, we've got this very interesting shaped head, and he calls himself Ambassador Ilani. And what he's saying to me and has told me, apart from you can actually hear his star language during this presentation, what he told me was he's come here as an ecological engineer to help us create a new type of habitat that fits in more in harmony with this planet. Now, this is a 17-year-old boy that is telling me this. Many humanoids and grey types, from the humanoid Nordics to the blue beings, Zeta type. We've got the star people that Martin Law has drawn, and he says he always has to do them with all the colours because it's the only way it feels right, his star people. And notice too, he's got a lot of these very unusual scripts. And this is something that I have found very frustrating, is to say, when you're looking for evidence of contact, you don't get ordinary people starting to do strange scripts and start drawing star beings and start doing unusual drawings unless something has happened. Many species, these are another two. This one is a being that was drawn by a gentleman in the Navy who said it was in authority. And the other one is actually a being from Sirius, according to the young man who drew that. And the cone heads. Now, what's interesting, again, I'm always looking for correlation around the globe. This was drawn by a lady in Australia, where she said this was something that beamed out these kinds of lights, and she's done a script as well. There's and I will talk very briefly about a scientist in Sweden who had her own encounters with the cone heads. And here she talks about a healing that comes from this particular belt that sent out different frequencies. So we've got someone in Sweden who is actually saying the same thing as someone in Australia. And when I sent this picture to her, she said she could read some of the script. So what are the odds? You know, when we become too skeptical, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Here are many other non-human forms, the lion beings, felines, grey beings, and I was told by one lady in Queensland that she knew of 165 species of grey. Take it for what you like, but you know, I do feel that when we start to say, well, the greys are this and the Nordics are this or whatever, I feel it's like taking one human off this planet and saying that represents humans. I think we have to be very, very careful about putting things and these species and the intelligences in boxes. A young lady that talks about the many different beings that she interacts with. These she calls ambassadors, and these ones are particularly interesting to her because these ones were the energy beings that she interacts with most of the time. And she has drawn some quite incredible drawings of the different beings she's been interacting with over many years. Her mother's a scientist and really struggled with the fact that her daughter was talking about all these different beings, and only recently has come to terms with what her daughter speaks about. Ribbons of light, light beings. And this is what this experience has said to me. I astrally visited the large ship with many other souls, and there were a huge variety of beings, and they were playful and incredibly wise, and were able to shift their form at will from a humanoid shape to a ribbon of light. As I saw them, they seemed to be composed of effervescent bubbles of energy. And many, many people talk about seeing the light beings. But let's get to the Indigenous peoples, because I'm from Australia and because I am fascinated in what the Indigenous people already recognise and know about their interactions with the star beings. This is a beautiful painting by the artist Teddy Chessels. I was sent it from a lady in Melbourne. And there you have it. We've got the Aboriginal elder interacting with these two star beings, and actually one going up onto the spacecraft. And I'm going to show you another one in a minute. This one was from a gentleman in Canada, and he drew this image when he was 12 years old. And here we have him, he said, giving gifts to this being. And he said to me, my picture was of a native warrior paying homage to an ET. The orb symbolizes light as opposed to darkness. But this was the drawing that he did when he was 12 years old. And the other very interesting one, and I'm going to talk about the mantid as well as what the Aborigines call the Wandjina, which is the standard type grey with the big eyes. The mantid being, this mantid being, I've actually met someone here who's seen one similar to this, which is quite fascinating. This was a being that was seen by a scientist that lives very close to me, and he actually had this sighting of this being in Tasmania. He didn't know what to make of it. He watched it for about 5 minutes in the bedroom. He thought he was going crazy. The next morning, his partner said to him, "Did you see the being that was in the room last night?" So he knew that she saw it too. He went through a journey of believing he was still crazy, having many sightings with his father and with his best friend. But ultimately now has come to terms with the fact that he's having interactions with numerous types of intelligence. He can see orbs of light quite physically. He'll see these shadows. He will see different misty things. And he laughs sometimes, and we'll sit and have a cup of tea or something. He'll say, "There's a big blue orb above your head right now, Mary. What the hell is it doing there?" And I said, "It's about time you talked to it and found out." So, in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, the Xhosa call the mantid being the one who teaches, and pointed up to the sky. The Bushman legends, the mantis was the god who came down from heavens to share knowledge with mankind. And for some of you may be aware that apparently the mantid sometimes makes a very clicking kind of sound. And what was really interesting to me is that it seems that that can sometimes be heard when the mantid are around. And there is the Bushmen actually in South Africa that do that clicking sound, and I often wonder where that may have come from. But the Aborigine in Australia see them as gods and call them the Mamu. So they're reported to be very ancient and master geneticists. And the picture was drawn by a wonderful artist in America called Kasara. This one is interesting. This gentleman gave me a copy of a painting he was given by an Aborigine in Alice Springs. And I love this picture. I've actually framed it. Life on stars beyond the Milky Way, the Aboriginal connection to the Seven Sisters constellation. Look at them. Here they are. There's the craft. And the Aborigines, their beautiful desert and bushland of Australia. The planets, she said, are half a day's journey. They are very friendly and just watch the Aboriginal way of life. They have no guns, spears, or weapons. The air on their planet is food. Their green uniforms protect from Earth diseases. The space people speak all the languages. The elders say the space people showed them how to grow food and find water, and showed them amethyst stones for healing. This was interesting to me because Tracy Taylor, many years ago, in a dream, saw this being, which looks very similar to the Wandjina, which is the Aboriginal Wandjina, and she said, this crystal was an amethyst. So we're getting the cross-cultural connections, which to me helps with all our understanding of the reality. The ghost messenger from the constellation of Delphinus, who is represented by owls. So interesting. This is a painting by the Aborigines, the Min Min lights and the owls. And for many of you, I'm sure, understand that often the owl can be a screen for a being. And, you know, seeing it just outside the window, I saw an owl. If you take them into hypnosis, often they will understand it's not an owl after all. It's actually one of the beings. Interesting that it's part of the mythology of the Aborigine as well. And the Min Min lights, they say, are the spirits. So let's go to the orbs. The Min Min lights, ghost lights, spirit orbs, messenger of the spirits. These are two that I've taken just outside my home. And actually, I found you can call them in. But if I have time, I'll tell you how I did that. But what I want to show you is the Aboriginal connection. This is what they say. And what's fascinating here is these symbols here. One of the phenomena in Queensland that I'm going to show you now, it relates to what is known as fire circles, Aboriginal fire circles. Taken from the past tradition, the ancients set fire to grasslands to find the markings for their ceremonies. They were connected to space and space aliens, they said. Well, here is one. This lady actually had this in her paddock. She noticed, she was told 2 days before by an Aboriginal elder that something very special about her land, and there was a sacred site on her land. 2 days later, they saw this strange fire circles circling round on this particular paddock. And when they looked again, there was this symbol. And as you can see, the fire is doing something very strange. It's going in straight lines. Completely bizarre, completely weird. What's fascinating is you can see it there. Look, there. Oops, I'm going backwards again. I'm getting carried away here. There you are. So that's where the paddock was, and it's in Queensland. And I just want to show you how weird the way this fire was. And they saw lots of UFOs in this particular place, and also a very interesting image that morning. And this image that morning was this. One of their friends came along and saw this strange light in the field, and was this, which she called an angel. This was the craft the lady who had the paddock was seeing many, many times, and there's one of the craft that she saw in the valley as well. So it's a whole range of phenomena that is what I think part of the triggers. Interestingly, Dr. Stephen Greer, in his book, Contact, has got the same symbol, and these three circles laid in the form of an equilateral triangle that apparently was something that they'd meditated on, and then a very short time later, the exact design was in one of the fields. So it's about consciousness. All of this suggests that we are working with our consciousness, with everything that's related to this. Here's more different types of orbs, and I believe that some of them may be spirits, some of them may be ETs, some of them may very well be ourselves when we travel out of body, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. But this one here was taken on the way to Area 51. This lovely lady is a friend of mine. I went there and went to the Rachel Inn, and then we went to the very boundary of Area 51 about 11:30 at night. It was the scariest thing in the world, but very exciting as well. We did see some strange lights, and I didn't realize when I took this picture, this is called the extraterrestrial highway, that this strange moving orb, I believe, was there probably saying hello. So, contact, balls, orbs of light, extraterrestrial, dimensional intelligences. And for any of you that had experiences, I'm sure you've sensed orbs, or you've seen them, or you've experienced, and some of them say they've seen beings coming out of them. I just think this is one of the ways we travel. And this is what Tracy's saying. My contact with cosmic beings was before I was born. These beings were my family before I came to the Earth domain, and this close relationship has continued after my birth. And I've got many of my, those that have contacted me that have told me they've remembered before they came here. They will even remember that they know they're in them, their mother's womb, the fetus is there, but their consciousness is actually observing the family that they're going to be born into. So this takes it to a whole new level. Do you say that's a load of rubbish? Or when you get enough people saying the same thing, you think, hold on a minute, maybe there's something in this after all. And this is another part of the orb phenomena. Why me? This 15-year-old boy I took into regression because the whole family had been taken up onto spacecraft. Very, very fearful. This is in England. And he didn't really want to do it. He wished he'd stayed at school, but his grandmother had had a regression, and she said to him, look, I've got rid of my fear now. How about you get rid of yours? So he goes into this space, and he does his own dialogue. I just sit there. And he's saying to them, why me? Oh, I chose to do it. I volunteered to come back. I chose to do this. The two Greys, they're still with me. They said to me, stay on track. I've been on here on Earth 27 times before. And when the Greys came to him in the garden, this is what he says. I can see orbs, whitey gold with two smaller ones. They're here to make me feel warm. They're family. The big orb is Great Nana. The other's Nana's dad and Granddad's brother. They're here to reassure me and make me feel comfortable. I asked him how he knew what the orbs of light were. John said, I just knew. I asked, why are they here too? And he said, they've come with the Greys to support me and make me feel comfortable so I wouldn't be frightened. He continued, and when the Greys left, he said the orbs of light went onto the spacecraft too. They did not mean to frighten us. When I was at the ranch, James Gilliland Ranch, some of you may know in Washington State in the US, James is an amazing gentleman, very much about enlightened contact. And that's, you're seeing in front of you, is his field of dreams, where people come and meditate and come to conferences. And he believes there's a portal in Mount Adams. What I wanted to show you was the first picture here was my first picture when everyone had just done a meditation. And I took, within less than a minute, I took this picture. So literally within the space of seconds, all these orbs were in the next photograph. And this one here is when I went to Mexico, and we'd done a meditation in Tepoztlan where Carlos Diaz saw and went into the light ships. And I wondered if we'd have any interesting interactions, and we did. If I have time, I'll tell you about it. But what was interesting afterwards was these orbs were around. As you can see, they're distinctly different as well. And this was an experiment when I said to a friend of mine, I don't see them, but I sometimes can sense things around me. And I said, look, I'm going to call one in and see if you can get a picture of it. And it was just purely an experiment. So I stood on my balcony. And I said, come on, guys, give us a look. I can be a bit disrespectful sometimes, and I just said, come on. Within a few minutes, I felt there might be something there, and I said, take the picture. And there, within, just over a meter, was one of the orbs. So you can do this. This was also some more visits I was in Bunbury in Crop Circles and Contact Tour with Janet Ozabard, who's a crop circle researcher, and she was taking pictures of orbs and what have you, but what she did get ultimately was by my laptop, right by me was this strange image, and I don't know if you can see it. It looks very much like one of those little beings was making sure that I was saying what I needed to say, I suspect. So, are we interacting with intelligences through music and frequency? Certain musical patterns can create amazing resonance when the right spirit is fused with musical soundscape. Now, one of the interesting, again, I want to show you what can happen even if we can't see it, what is going on. How music and frequency can create para-physical doorways to higher evolution. Higher intelligence has left humanity with musical cues, I was told by this experiencer, encoded, and this frequency patterns encoded in ancient temples, so we can use them to create positive contact culture. Darren gave a musical performance using sacred Hebrew words, demonstrating how sacred language can create a portal. The following images were captured in Adelaide. And I want to show you that there he is starting to play, and someone was taking the pictures. And I want you to hear that, first of all, the music he was playing, which uses Hebrew. Now I want you to see, as that's been playing, what's happening in the room. You see already a shift through the camera. then this. We see energies coming down, energies coming up. We see even the picture on the screen changing. This is why he's playing. I was there. I didn't see it with my physical eyes. Then this. And then this. Completely covering the image. He calls them the light beings coming in, purely from that frequency. So we don't see this, but the camera does. Ribbons of light, are they light beings? And again, is this the light beings coming in and we're not even aware of it? We may feel it, we may get a resonance, but we don't see it. But the frequencies that we're bringing in through music, or maybe through the star languages, are doing this on another aspect of ourselves. This lady here told me this. She's from the US, and she said, I was told I was only 22% humanoid. The rest is a form of light energy. She's going to speak the star languages, and I want you to see something else that's going on there. She says, when I speak the star languages, I feel I'm giving directives to angels. Nearly every time I take a video, it records spacecraft. I've taken many at night. I've been gone hours, and I've woken up with tree material in my hair, and I've not left the house since I washed it. I believe I'm traveling at night to different dimensions, times, and my actual physical body goes, not just the soul. In 2009, I began to awaken once or twice around 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, just as someone grabs me and shakes me. As I move in bed awakening, I can feel a strong but not painful, as I can describe, a rush of adrenaline, an electric current going through my body. Only once did I wake myself speaking another language. I've had gentlemen and ladies speak languages in their sleep, and their partners recorded them. It's as though they're having a dialogue on another level when they're sleeping. So what's going on with that? But I want to show you this. I want you to notice as this lady, her name's Emma Strong, you can look her up, she's speaking languages, but watch and look for the orbs as she does so. It's quite fascinating.
Okay, we're going to speak just a little bit about, I'm going to take in the language this morning. Ochandanda kosudre jijina maneludo tishudare. Osake pato ya. O manya da to kle pechitele pesir koshitele manera tata. We are shokwa here shitwe. Anzudi madoro rasheda. Anzudi madoro keshile basoro kechile manera koshitele basoro leji rasa rabashi ko rakenero keshile batatore. You go ashumba. Osako atatale chichirane, akuzidia, Jodotation, Ototalechi, Okapatagili Marakushi, the Kitchen, the Basel Kitchen, Atatai, yo, Hasho, Anatotoi, Atasatake, Asatate, Ashio, Monodochesia, Ukichitala, Bo Akasaya. Atatushina manere ba you are to do it. And the dinner totoke. Atati episode of the gay. You have had to show the lady to the manera quay. Do Euro derbatata, at the derabatata, the Euro as a good manetochia, Okapapa soy, Atashia nano yata to quay at a toy. After the episode of Kitchi, the Menedo Teshit, Dijo, Yana Loka, do Akata sote, Asatala Menedo to the episode, as a episode of Tito Mandato, at the Genie Manadato.
Hypercommunication. They do that. It should be borne in mind that the nature of extraterrestrial communication, that in a majority of instances, star visitors communicate with humans by telepathic transfer of mental images and concepts rather than by words and speech. And everything is made up of the same matter, resonating at different harmonics, so the ETs are able to communicate with us, directing thought on subatomic levels, and so activate the subconscious. The symbols are meant to communicate the nature of the macrocosm. One of the fascinating things for me is, and has been, evidence of a reality, is when individuals do unusual things that they never did before. One of the fascinating things is all these strange scripts, the strange writing. I was speaking about this in Queensland in a very small audience, and I played the language. And a nurse came up to me afterwards and said, as soon as I heard the language, I had to get a piece of paper. And she started to write this script she'd never written before, just purely from hearing that language. She said, I don't know why I've done it, but it was instinctive. I had to start writing the script. So what is that? You can't dismiss that. What this physicist is saying to Deborah Lapatina was this: many of these glyphs are actually formulas on their way to forming matter. And she says this of her understanding: light transmissions and cosmic language. It's hard for me not to sing them, as singing the frequencies are an integral part of the transmission. These languages carry billions of bits of information in a bridge format. Human language is linear. Speaking, singing, light language feels spiral and wave-like. Sensation of being awash with layers of knowing that is understood but cannot be articulated in a linear word string. So let me just show you, just let you hear a little bit of that. That'll give you just a bit of an idea. I mean, this lady speaks many different languages, and I'm contacted by individuals around the globe who say, I've always spoken this language, or several of them, and it makes me feel very emotional. What is it? I have an understanding on some level. And we know now that with music alone, the frequencies seem to bring in certain energies or dimensional intelligences. So it's interesting on a number of levels why this is happening. Light language by this, he calls it the Arcturian Collective by Antonio, who's 16 years old. And this is what one of the languages he calls the Arcturian. The drawing he's done, as you notice up there, this drawing has got also got symbols in it. He does many, many of these symbols. And just to give you a sense of his, the Arcturian language, as he calls it. That actually is another lady called Solrita who speaks the Arcturian language. I'm going to let you hear Antonio's in a minute. Okay, this is another one from Emma, and the reason that I'm mentioning her again is that she's talking about how she does the writing. And the image you're getting to the left there is a lot of the physics that she has downloaded, along with many, many others that have the downloading of the science information, everything to do with quantum physics, right through to free energy devices or whatever. And this is what's so wonderful about free, is that we're going to have individuals, scientists that can look at this information. We've never had this kind of option before. And I would like you to see how she explains it.
I'm going to try to hold this camera like this, but it'll be shaking and moving, but I don't know how else to get the whole picture in. But this is me writing, and I don't meditate or anything, it just comes in.
So you can see it's very spontaneous. And yet there's a sense of absolutely knowing how to write it, which to me is really, not all of it looks like a script like this does, or, you know, I feel it looks like shorthand. I'm just going to get her to explain a bit more of what it is. Let me just take it on a bit more. Let's move it a little bit further along. I want her to explain it to you.
It's almost sort of backhand, and it sort of has changed over the years. But that's the writing. See, it more or less goes that way or that way. And they put a lot of dots. For some reason, I'm dotting things in there, and I'm not quite sure why that is, unless there's extra emphasis, or it's like, I don't know, that it could be a period at the end of the sentence. But anyway, that's my writing, and I do have to hold the pen sometimes more or less. It's easiest to hold it like this, because I have more. If I were to write like this, you have to move like this, and that's not how they're grabbing it. They're wanting to use my whole a lot more of this rather than this sort of thing. And it gives me better control because it seems like they grab the pen and it just is taken control of. But I can't tell if it's like perhaps an outside source or if it's actually just me, my higher self, doing it.
So that's her understanding. What you're seeing here is some symbols, a young man in the UK tattooed on his arm. And the reason he has done it, because he felt so alone all his life. These are symbols that matter a great deal to him. And the ones that he's highlighted are the ones where he says sometimes when something significant happens on this planet, then they start to itch or highlight to him. It's almost like that's explaining what's actually happening on the planet. And he says this about himself: I walked and talked early, and from the age of 3 started writing this script. At school I would do pages and pages of these symbols. I put the symbols on my body as I wanted others like me to recognize them. This gentleman, Martin Law, writes this type of script. I was just studying my hieroglyphs. I'm astonished at what I've done. I mean, the characters are totally consistent throughout, and not only flawless, but to my sense is written with the bold confidence and authenticity of a piece of Zen calligraphy. To be honest, I haven't a clue what I've written, but I do know when I write only one character wrong, I have to throw it on the fire and start again. I don't know how I do it. Here's some more of the scripts. So I've got pages and pages and books of different scripts. Some of them are very, very similar. This is from a young man in Western Australia. And now I'm going to take it to the artwork. And the reason I want to show you this is that I get sent enormous quantities of artwork, which I think some of it is extremely significant if we don't yet understand it. This is artwork from a lady in America. She is an artist. And she said over years, she's had artwork downloaded to her from intelligence. Intelligence is showing our multidimensional worlds. The imagery, she said, led me to an appreciation the world we live in and the world beyond this world are interconnected. I have an ability to communicate with beings beyond this dimension who want to communicate with all of us. And this is how she said, over this number of years, all this strange artwork, and some of it is quite incredible. She said, it's almost like a thesis, a work in progress, has opened my mind to bigger picture that includes biology, neurology, physics, astronomy, astrophysics, theology, philosophy, spirituality, technology, anthropology, archaeology. I feel I'm in school with higher intelligences who are instructing me and teaching me. After the work, it forces me to read and to learn what they've suggested. It's awakened me to a higher consciousness and awareness. I've learned to see life differently and how everything is interconnected by mathematical order, balance, harmony that flows within us and beyond. This art progressed in groups of a time, approximately something that I was not aware of until the next body of artwork was completed. It took 10 years before I realized that specific information was being relayed to me through this art-making process. I wondered how we were ever going to understand what this meant. And it's, again, joining the dots, isn't it? And waiting for more information to come along. This beautiful artist, friend of mine, Lorraine Joy Irk, was told that she would have contact in Uluru. You can see the craft that she's taken actually by Uluru itself. But she's an experiencer, she's an artist, and she surprised me one day because I showed her some of the artwork, some of Ceci's artwork, and immediately she was able to find her way into understanding it. And this is how she described her feelings when she connected to the artwork. She says, I feel 2 eyes are looking at me. This is affecting my body. There's another download. We are mirror images of they, the matrix. We don't need to understand. It's interstellar, it's galactic. When people look at this, they will be open to possibilities. Some now being born will have a direct link to that bright ball of white light, the thread to all the new ones. And then she goes on with Tracy's. It's amazing, I'm going somewhere else. It creates a portal or an entrance. It's like I'm not here, but can be between both places at the same time, like the ability to go there and be with them. Leonardo da Vinci created the same portal. They're working with me through the pictures, the matrix. It's downloading to people's subconscious. They are full of compassion. Just like us, we are they. That was really fascinating, but it was just one person, till I went to England. and I met a gentleman, Terry Mace, who's a psychotherapist. So coming from both the left and right brain. And this is what happened to him, which was different to what I expected after I'd shown these images. He said this: "When I saw Tracy's art to begin with, I was traumatized. I felt sick, almost like I had a nervous breakdown. It knocked me off my feet, metaphysically, spiritually, an internal implosion, like a light going on, switches pulled, flashbacks, experiences. I sensed and understood something I shouldn't have had knowledge of, an awakening spiritually. Since being a child, I had forgotten, and it was something I had been trained to do. I was able to sense and switch on a channel, use my hand as a barcode, reader scanning with the third eye, to receive the equivalent of several hundred terabytes, and unloaded them, an uplink that knocked me backwards. I felt like I'd been hit like a lightning strike, information and data at light speed. I understood on multiple levels what it meant, what its potential was for humanity. Group consciousness, codes, ciphers, geometric formula, blueprints, designs, models, encryptions, meta-languages, hieroglyphics, schematics. An internal Rosetta Stone was turned on, an intergalactic process. I could understand on a conscious and superconscious level something I'd been trained to do. I was a code breaker, able to interpret encrypted codes received and downloaded. I don't know where it comes from, but activated by the artwork, and I'm able to understand and do something with it." So there's a purpose, even if all of us at this moment don't understand what it is. And this takes me to the next part of my story with this, the new human, the upgrades demonstrating our future and potential of our extraterrestrial creators. And this is what Dr. Rodwell said many years ago to me. "I've come to the conclusion that not only are star children amongst us, but the rapid advancement of the human species is due to alien intervention in our bodies and mind." And some of the things that I've been told about these new children, I'm going to very briefly go into, because I'm just looking at the time and think, oh my goodness, I'm running out of time here. They have superior mental and analytical capabilities, conscious awareness of their connection to the universe. They have enhanced DNA, sensitivity to thought, emotion, and physical environment, photographic memories, telepathy, manipulation of time and space, non-verbal communication. The evidence of these changes, I'm not going to have time for now, other than to say that they've discovered with some children, they have, instead of 20 codons of this particular healing ability turned on, they have 24 and are almost immune to everything. I can't go into how the evidence, because I've got to look at the clock here. Oh, hold on a minute, we're all right. I was getting ahead of myself. Extra high-functioning psychic children in China. These children, now seen globally, are able to open the flower bud with the power of thought, move beans from a sealed bottle with thought, teleportation abilities, objects and people. They have the ability to remotely cause changes in human bodies other than themselves, their blood pressure hundreds of miles from the individual, film changing DNA in a petri dish. One of the fascinating stories I wrote in a recent article was a 12-year-old boy who told his father that when his father was on the computer at work, that he could see through his eyes and was seeing what his father was actually doing on the computer. And he said to his dad, "What is it, though, those particular things that you do that I don't understand? Because when I'm looking through your eyes, that they confuse me." You can imagine what his father was thinking of that. Chinese boy who can see in the dark. Is this evidence we're changing? This is an interesting one because I don't know, other than I'm offering it to you as a possibility. 2 weeks after Nong was born, his eyes were seen to be different. He had blue eyes which emitted a blue-green light, just like cat's eyes, that glow and help him see in the dark. He was able to complete a written questionnaire in a pitch-black room. And for such a thing to occur, so the scientists exploring him said, would require multiple mutations to happen at once. So, multiple mutations, how is it then that this has happened? One of the things that is brilliant in my work, and I know that AJ knows what I'm talking about here, is when you get more information that corroborates what you're beginning to understand. Dr. William Brown wrote to me about 5 years ago now. He's a member of Exopolitics. And I asked him about the star kids and my understanding of these new kids, where there seems to be an upgrade with each successive contact with a family. And this is what he told me. I believe genetic modification is occurring right now in utero and are actually producing new humans. Their new genetic architecture allows them to see the world in a multidimensional fashion. I believe research would show dormant genetic regions are now being integrated into the biological systems and occurring in all of us to produce expanded awareness. The exponential increase in ADD, autistic, some types of autism, indigo children, I'd probably add Asperger's in there. Their brains work faster. I believe they already know what is being taught. The intrinsic understanding of knowledge and information operates at biomolecular level. It's transgenerational information. It's encoded within the atomic structure of the DNA molecule and can be accessed more efficiently to produce savant-like characteristics. The modification of the DNA is more like a remodeling of the genome to make dormant regions more accessible again. The hybrids are altogether a new species of human. That's his understanding, and he is obviously got a PhD in biology and cellular and molecular biology. So, what are we being told here? They have superior mental and analytical capabilities, direct connection to higher consciousness, extreme sensitivity to thought and emotion, enhanced DNA, photographic memories, fast motor neuron responses, manipulation of time and space and nonverbal communication, high sensibilities. The other thing that I found by talking to parents and these children is many of them not only consciously recall being on spacecraft, educated by various species of ET, they recall their past lives, including ones where they are not human, access to knowledge and information they have not consciously learned, downloads of knowledge, a sense of mission, I've come to help my family wake up, often feel alien on this planet. They're intelligent, intuitive, telepathic in some instances, write scripts, perceive spirits as ETs, both physical and non-physical. They have healing abilities, aura perception, empathic, communicate with animals, and perceive energy fields and frequencies. My contact with non-human cosmic race occurred since before I was born. This is what these children tell me. And the scientist that is going to be one of the disclosure from the ground up that I'm actually going to meet in Sweden is Dr. Lena Olsson. She talks about the new human, the evolving species that she was told was a quantum letter people. And she says the same thing. I came down to inhabit a human body as I have done many times before. The new human programs, she calls the letter people. The programs such as ADHD, Asperger's are letter people. I do not believe these are broken genes, but instead offering a new, multidimensional skills to prevent limited reprogramming of a third-dimensional reality. It's not so simple as foreign DNA. It's a combination of genetically improved bodies in combination with souls from different places in our universe, incarnating in improved bodies. These souls have different frequencies, vibrations, depending on their evolutionary status, that plays a role in activation of the DNA in that particular body. I believe we also have to take into account the collective soul of Homo sapiens. So we're going into the spiritual realm. We can't but go into the spiritual realm. And she said, letter people show an impairment in communication between brain halves, thus use one side of the brain for solving the same problem. They say we are dysfunctional. However, it may be a way to free more space in the brain for solving different tasks. The Asperger part might be responsible for higher knowledge. That is how she understands what we're seeing in an exponential increase in what we have felt were actually dysfunctional individuals. Letter people have different bodies and nervous systems. In my case, she says, the nerve ends she has more nerve ends for pressure in her skin. I can see more colors and differences between shades of color, acute sense of smell and taste, acute hearing, a bit outside normal range. I'm sensitive to frequencies of all kinds. That means radioactive radiation, energy fields, and energy beaming out of angry people or animals, as well as love and happiness in them. If we could learn to focus and control our own energy field, we would be less prone to getting ill from our surroundings. We can also use our own self-healing abilities. And one of the ways that you can help yourself if you fit into that category, she said for herself, she's observed calculated levels of acetylcholine and dopamine in the brain are higher in letter people. And she said that if you go and take more of the vitamin B families, which you need more choline of, she said, because they use more of it, that's a simplicity behind the cure of the letter people. And if the effect stops, she said, after the first intake, you continue to take more of it and it will rebalance you out. And if any of you are interested in knowing more about this, I can give you more information through email or ultimately connect you with Dr. Olson. One of the interesting things for me a few years ago, and it's like the clues come, the synchronicities, you all know about the synchronicities. And this book by Neil Gold, he's a gentleman, now I should think in his late 50s, who said he didn't know he was ADHD, but he always said that he saw reality differently. And he calls his book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind. So the way that I understand it is if you want to create a new program for humanity, you have to provide them with a way where they won't be programmed into an old paradigm, an old belief system. And the way to do that is to change them so that they don't absorb it in the same way the old models like me are, and actually make it harder for them to be programmed. One of the whole things with this is, and I get many people feeling very much victims of their experiences, and we have to look at what that means and how they wish to understand it. One of the things Tracy Taylor says is this, and I leave this with you to make up your own mind. She says this: basically at the start I misunderstood the Greys. The knowing ET part of me initially made a decision to assist them, and the understanding of this can be overshadowed by fear, which stems from our limited human perceptions and reactions to these experiences. The children's drawings, I get many. Some of you may have seen these ones, drawn by children. One of the first, this one over here, to your left here, is one drawn by a 13-year-old. You notice there's not just the egg-shaped ones, but the ones with flat heads. The other one is the energy field and the craft that this 7-year-old had drawn. But this young lady of 9, these are the beings she calls her guides. Imoko is one of them, and the little green being, they teach her things. This is another drawing by a young lady who's she's 6 years old, and she drew this after an experience where she said, "The little blue bears take me at night, and when they bring me back, I am sad." And these she calls the doctors. I know I'm going to be short of time, but what I was going to say about what this young boy is saying here, he sees both the mantid and the lion beings, and he talks about his family. And his family are the mantid, not his human family. His human family are here to look after him. But in this video clip, he actually was talking about how the mantid, he goes up on the craft, he's taught things on the craft. He explains sometimes he's in with his two of his school friends. He describes how he's in a tube where he can't move and he sees blue beings. And I said, well, this is all conscious memory. I don't do any hypnosis with children at all. And he'd said to me, well, he said, I said, well, what, you can see the blue beings, why are you in the tube? He said, oh, that's my yearly medical exam. So I said, okay. And he said, and then we go and we learn things together with my school friends. And he explained how he used his brain waves, is the way he called it, to create things in the air. We would move things, we would change things with our brain waves, is the way. And I said, are they all children like you, like your school friends? He says, no, some of them aren't the same as us. They have different eyes and they're different, was how he explained it. But he also said something very, very profound, was when he's sometimes on the craft, he evaporates into a mantid form. And I said, well, how does that feel? He said, well, a bit strange. He says, but I come back into my body again. And then we get another gentleman who's a politician in England who at the same time synchronously was writing to me. And he also says that the mantid are his family. And he described how sometimes his essence goes into the mantid form to help with the humans. And he also talked about sometimes being taken and when he was little, and held above their head where they would almost sing to him. And I said, and why do they do that? And this is Simon Parkes in England, who's a Labour councillor. And he said, oh, that's when they're happy with me. So I got in touch with this little 8-year-old again, and I said, you talked about being held above the head by these beings. And he said, oh, yes. I said, do you know why? He said, oh, that's when they're happy with me. Now, we've got someone in Queensland, and we've got someone in England. There's almost 45 years difference in the ages. And they're both saying similar things. With the trilling sounds, both of them say that, both with the connections to both the cat beings and the manta beings, although also with the reptilian with Simon Parkes. What's the odds? What's the odds on that? And this was something else he said to me. I think I levitated last night and I was in a bubble when I travelled. My ancestors say I go back to my planet when I die. The great ancestor is a manta. My brother manta is someone I see on the spaceship. I see him as human and other times as manta. Ancient Egyptians were not human. They were cat beings or lion beings, and they built the Sphinx. It was to tell humans there are other life forms. Now, he's 8 when he told me this. And again, I'm very aware of time, so I'm going to have to be very careful about how much I show you. But this young lady is Lee, has told me a great deal about her understanding of the beings, and this is what she looks like in another life, purple-skinned. And I asked her if she'd ever felt, when she astrally travels, you know, what that's like. And she said, oh, she says, yes, I do that all the time. She says, I travel in my Izoni form, which is the blue skin one, because that's the one I most connect to. And interestingly, in a regression with her mother was also on that planet, the scientist, and she really struggled with that because they ended up dialoguing in Izoni to one another, with Lee speaking the language and her mother answering her in Izoni. But when she came out of it, she couldn't speak the language. She could only do it in regression. This is about her saying why she's different, but unfortunately, I think we're going to be a bit short of time. If I get a chance to show you that, I will. The other interesting thing is a corroboration, and for me, that's extremely important. A number of children, from a 4-year-old to a 15-year-old, say when the beings touch them, the skin feels like dolphin skin. And this may be one particular species of ET. I'm not saying they all feel like that, but what was fascinating was, for any of you that were aware of Dr. Michael Wolff, who tragically died, I think, of cancer, when he wrote the book, The Catchers of Heaven. And what's interesting about him is that he was a genius, really. And he had a PhD in theoretical physics. He was a whistleblower. He worked at Area 51, Dulce, S4, had above top secret clearance. And this is what he said about the Greys, because he'd met them and interacted with them. And there's a Grey on the front cover. And he said this: the Greys have personalities and a sense of humour. Their smooth, soft skin feels like dolphin skin to touch. They share the same evolutionary path as dolphins. Dr. Wolff said, I've not met a Grey I didn't like. And Coulter is the Grey that he knew and communicated with. Children with telepathic downloads write in strange scripts, speak star languages, have awareness of their origins, mature beyond their years, and able to decode complex ET artwork. So how do they do this? First of all, there's 2 children, one from the US that wrote this script on her arm, and she said it was to help her mother understand. The other script is very local to me, and it was his 4-year-old son wrote this script on his arm and said to his dad, he didn't know what it means, but it means something. Now, it's really interesting why children would write scripts on themselves. Here's a script from the same gentleman that did all the tattoos, and this is what he told me about when he was younger. 3 times a week, I'd be woken by a glow, a woman with long blonde hair, green eyes, and there was no beam me up Scotty. We would be in a room, the walls would be metallic, when touch would ripple like water. A window like a plasma screen showed stars, nebula, and symbols. When put in the correct order, would show me things. And the script that you're seeing here, he did when he was 3 years old. I don't know many children of 3 that can do that. I've got 3 grandchildren, well 4 now, and I haven't ever seen them do that. I'm very aware of time here. What I want you to hear very, very briefly is a 7-year-old's mother contacted me and said, my daughter happened to see the script in your book, and she told me what it meant. And I said, did she explain it? How did she explain it? Oh, she told me she could translate it. So I ended up talking to this young girl over Skype, and I said, could you read it to me? Oh, yes, she said. Do you want it in the language or do you want it in English? So I said, well, could you do both? Oh, yes. So quite spontaneously, she speaks it in the language that she's reading. She translates it into English. And I said, do you know the source of that information? Oh, yes, she said, that's the Greys. Later, I met her again physically, and I showed her some more scripts that I've got so many different ones. And she said, look, I can't read all of them, but I can read some of them, and I can read this one. And she sort of read it diagonally. And again, she did it in a language. She translated it for me, and I said, and where does that come from? She said, oh, that's the Greys and the Mantis. So you make of that what you will. I'm just wondering if I've got time for you just to hear a little bit about how, I'm not sure if I can play that for you, just to hear it. No, I'll leave that. If you want to hear it some other time, I can always send you the clip. This is what I wanted you to see too. These are some of Tracy Taylor's drawings now. A mother in the US wrote to me, and she was just interested because she'd had experiences whether her children would have any sense. She'd never talked about this, she'd never explained it. She said, what do you think of these lovely pictures? She said to them. So there was no prompts from any of it. She just wanted to know his reaction. Her son says, and he was 7, they contain information about aliens. The pictures contain images of harvesters of energy, machines which harvest the sun's energy. There are different types. The other pictures contain information about the aliens. One is about the 7 who will be coming. There are eagle people and cat and lion people. They have ancient messages. Remember, he's 7. And this is what else he adds to this. She says, first, I honestly wish he was making this up, Mary. I asked about the pyramids in Tracy's paintings. The son says, that's how the aliens will come. That's where they'll land and arrive. It's a teleportation machine. The big pyramid isn't the only one. There are others. They will come at the pyramids and then they'll fly over the ground to the South Pole and then shoot up to the North Pole by the way of a transporter, and then fly down to the pyramids again. He made hand motions which indicated the craft would teleport or pass through the center of Earth from pole to pole. Mother said to him, when you say others, do you mean other pyramids? The son says, I mean other teleport places on every continent, places all over the world. Mother says, so there are other types of teleportation places than the big pyramid? Yes, in the side of a hill, lots of hills, hundreds of them around the world. It's actually a place where the aliens do science there. I stopped asking questions. I just think I needed to digest this. He was starting to scare me again. Her 7-year-old son has dyslexia and says he sees the information in his mind. My daughter has helpers who guide and teach her. They are here to help humanity with the awakening. These are the guides. She said, in my first pregnancy, a voice told me that my children are not mine. They belong to no one. She gets important messages in ET languages. I showed her your presentation. When the lady does the healing and writes in ET languages, my daughter responded in joy and excitement. She knows what I've written. We all originate from Dayland, she said. Dayland is where the light lives, and there's a being which has no gender. I call it an ultra-terrestrial, and that's where the light and the love and the angels live. I'm here to help my family wake up. Everyone is sleeping. These are some of her symbols. My daughter has healing abilities, speaks 3-star languages. She knows where these languages are from. She talks to water to heal it. It tasted different after this. She says the languages are from a place outside the universe. Parents have to listen, and something will happen in the next 5 years to this planet, from 2012 to 2017. She's 9. And it's interesting, isn't it, about healing water. when we know that Masaru Emoto, Dr. Masaru Emoto, some of you I'm sure know about his work, where he has shown with water how it changes through the either intent, through both prayer or music. It actually changes form. And Dr. Olson, I said to her, what do you make of this? I see no problem believing this. The spiral formations I've been working with my water research, loading energy back into water, which helps healing, recharging, strengthening the energy field, wherever it's pointed, rightly used, could be the bliss for humanity in rebuilding our earth. So she says this, healing works on a cellular level whether you believe it or not. The healing from my hands affected the protein binding to the gene P53, which plays a role in turning genes on and off. And this is her understanding. So if we're 50 to 75% water, and if human language and frequencies can alter both DNA and water, what effect could star languages and frequencies have on the human body and DNA, I wonder? And I'm keeping an eye on the time here. This is another way of looking at a crop circle, just to throw that out there and take you further down my rabbit hole. This lady, again, it's Tracy saying about an experience of being one of the crop circle makers. She had a dream where she found herself floating above the landscape, hills and crops, the orbs floating next to me. I realized I was in the form of a ball of energy consciousness with other orbs. I realized I was headed for a field and there was an amplification of energy, joyful action, and I thought I felt the field would rearrange itself accordingly. A beautiful communication between myself as the orb consciousness and the earth itself as a reflection of vibrational fields below. She said some are sacred symbols related to star systems, some contained within them are maps to create alternative power sources or mathematical formula, and some sacred areas of importance on earth. Secret school, very briefly, I'm going to go through that just to give you some idea of what the children tell me and the teenagers. Whitley Strieber many years ago wrote this book, Secret School, where he said he was given lessons involved in the manipulation of time because learning how to use time as a tool is the key to reaching higher consciousness and a relationship with the beings. These are some of the syllabus taught on the craft, from quantum physics, the holographic nature of the universe, the non-linear nature of time and space, the awareness and connection to all sentient life, levitation abilities and skills off-world, understanding the spatial geometry of thought, how to operate in a multidimensional reality states of consciousness, taught how to communicate, interpret, and interact with interdimensional non-human intelligences, out-of-body training, telekinesis, telepathy and mind melds, multidimensional ecology, manifestation-directed thought and emotion, healing skills and working with energy, the true history of man's origins and informed of their star heritage, time travel, teleportation, and universal spirituality. Secret school, I never before heard or read about anyone having alien classes as a child. I remember being given physics classes at the age of 3 or 4 years old. So this is a teacher now explaining how the new children will operate, from verbal language to telepathy, through thought transplanting and mind melds, the new way to educate. I found I could just go into their mind and absorb the concepts directly. There was thought transplanting going on. My bank of information was merged with theirs and they re-schematized their own knowledge and systems accordingly. Ancient symbols hold the conceptual keys that trigger within the observing mind without the teacher being present. This is a teacher telling me how it works. So they have multidimensional sight. This young boy was ill. His mother asked him what he was looking at, and he said, I'm looking at my blue energy body. I can see why I'm ill, and I will be well in a few days' time. Again, I can't, unfortunately, have time to show you how he's talking about educated on the craft. They're teaching me so I can teach adults. This is a 9-year-old saying, I'm here to help my family wake up. Everyone is sleeping. 50% of people on this planet are star seeds, but many get lost. Only 20% will remember who they are. Why don't they listen? Children are programmed. The teachers just push the keys. The stress of modern living extinguishes their inner core, their light. It's like a virus. We lose the knowledge we had in the beginning. But everything is possible. We just need to believe it. The light orbs are sent here to protect us. So I'm just about right here, I think. Activation of our DNA. and soul choices. This is what Dr. Olson is saying. I think the increased resonance from both space and Earth is pushing the DNA into some sort of three-dimensional configuration, so dormant genes in the so-called junk DNA are aligning, like a time-activated evolutionary step controlled through the DNA. DNA being the crystalline formation with an encoded message aimed to speed up evolution. However, the biocontainer is one of three parts influenced by two parts, mind and soul. The soul is an energy container which moves from the body to body between lives, dimensions, worlds with frequencies which have huge impact on DNA. The soul provides the life force and the data bank, and this main control sends frequencies, signals, programmed photons, electrons, gamma rays to help you carry on your mission and evolve. Not everyone will choose to upgrade, so there will be high frequency people and low frequency people, and your lifestyle will either enhance your frequency or lower it. This is about the new Earth, very briefly. This young lady of 5 years old, the mother wrote for me from Turkey and showed me the script her daughter had written, which is very much like Dolores Cannon in her book's Convoluted Universe. This is the new Earth, she said to her mother. It's in a different galaxy, and not everyone will be going there. People don't know about this. This is a secret. She's 5 years old. The new agenda, which Lee talks about, is that we are now being upgraded in terms of her connection to some of these beings that she interacts with, which she calls ambassadors. UFO encounter, wake-up call, modern-day shamanic experience. I participated in this in 2000 with a gentleman sadly passed away, Simon Harvey Wilson. He did a thesis comparing shamanism to alien abductions, and what he found was the parallels were amazing, all about transcending fear, all about having healing abilities and remembering past lives, telepathic abilities and changes in perception. This is a school project from a young man who was showing me about the new technologies. He's from Arcturus. He communicates with light beings and technologies resonating on pure light and sound technology with crystalline generators. He said this will increase the vibratory level of the world by crystals and with pyramids. This was a school project that he did. This is more of him with some of the symbols he does, and I'm so aware I'm running out of time here, but I just want you to hear a little bit of his star language. He's now 17.
Summa tatakaparaka tikatsakat sita takata summa takat ritikata jinga tapatumasa rokatingo takaparaka insikatakaparaka insitatakamata so ringa tatakaparaka rikingika kopatakarakapatakaparaka singa taka shung patakit insikatakaparaka insiltukuna pakatakiku.
That's all I can give you because I've got more to finish with. Russian scientists found DNA can be influenced and reprogrammed by words and frequencies. So is it possible that this is related to the star languages? In fact, our DNA can be changed by human language, which is what they are saying. It just requires the right frequencies to be reprogrammed because our chromosomes function like a holographic computer using DNA laser radiation to modulate certain frequencies. Esoteric and spiritual teachers have known our body is programmable by language, words, and thought. Now it's being scientifically proven and explained. So is it possible that these star languages, they call light languages or universal languages, the new frequencies, which may reprogram or alter human DNA as human language appears to do? As we know, the human body is 50 to 75% water, so that's being reprogrammed potentially as well. This is something, if you want to see somebody using the frequencies with healing, then on this particular, you've seen it probably on my other presentations, Expressions of ET Contact, there's a young lady doing exactly that. I really hope to show you this before I go. This is a healing encounter with Dr. Ina Olson, who talks about the cone head as it comes in and heals her.
I woke up staring right into the lower body of a small being. I raised my head and upper body from the bed and leaned my head into my right hand. Immediately I focused my eyes on places in the room, and wondered what this being looked like. I left my body and went to those places in above and behind the being. I could see my body from above, felt so happy, and then I slowly lowered myself down into my body. When I was back and in control of my body, I leaned forward towards the being. He was still standing, healing me with his eyes shut, and I could see the soft glow from the fabric in his suit and every fiber in it.
That's just part of a very profound healing experience. I'm going on reserve battery now, so it's telling me very clearly that I'm nearly done. Right, so I'm going to just, where are we? This is the last bit. The genes have the characteristics of genes, but on another level contain information of their origin with the tools to transform into a higher form. The information of the donors and their background is there, a hidden key, and like a PC programmer hide their work. This key can be activated, and these programmers know the person when the person is ready to be contacted. The activated ones spread the signal to wake others up, and I feel they're speeding this up. So the new human, the gateway. So all these ways we are being interacted with is part of our waking up call. Mitch Batres says that the solar cycle 24 has begun. The sun's activity is 50% stronger than cycle 23. This wave affects not only the planet, but the human body's magnetic field and human emotions. And the magnetic influence of the sun will usher what's described by our ancient ancestors as a transition, bringing in a new state of being. Peter said, he's 12, humanity's been at this point 3 times, but we've been knocked off course. This time there's a 95% chance we'll make it, and possibly a 100% chance we are headed up to a higher level. It's slow, but in the last 3 years, he's been getting more and more in tune with the things that is due to the shift that's affecting everyone. Peter said, it's like the star seeds and the indigos of the planet, like us. Gaia cherishes because we can help the vibration of the planet more than any of the others. He's a 12-year-old boy. And to finish, I'm sorry if it sounded a bit rushed, but there's so much I'd love to share with you. This is a particular quote that I've mentioned more than a few times, but it's so relevant still. This young, well, she's a lady now of more mature years, said this to me: I can only come to the conclusion that we are becoming conscious co-participants in our own evolution. And with that in mind, they had better give us a brochure, which is, I guess, what they are doing. Thank you very much.